גדול אלוהי, שירו כי גדול אלוהי, כל אחד יראה כי גדול אלוהי.
You're live on sound, by the way.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
How are y'all today?
Good.
Do with all the small talk.
Itchy cool.
So we're doing Parasha Vayeshev. Y'all weren't watching the screen, so it was really nice. You can see it's all bright now.
Are we supposed to be together on that? Ooh. Ah.
I think he took that coat of many colors off.
So we can also get-
before they threw him in.
Maybe we can also get a.
Yeah, there we go. Okay,
That's good though.
there.
That's a good depiction.
Well, they did take that coat off him early, but for the picture, see, it
I know.
adds some, some graphics.
Yes, I know.
Thank you.
But do you realize your face is right up there with those brothers that tossed him?
Yes.
He's about to fall off the cliff.
Yeah. Okay. So you move the opposite direction. It's like I'm moving.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
Well, now that Donald's here, we can say the blessing together. Join me. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us in His commandments and commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of the Torah. And in Hebrew, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah.
Those other people are missing out. We have the Donald. Those other people, I think they have.
They have a Donald.
They've got
but
the
they don't
Donald.
have the Donald.
And our Donald's hair is real, by the way.
Okay, so this is the ninth reading from Genesis, Vayeshev, which means he dwelt or he lived. What's the main thrust of this Torah portion? Grab it and grab
The salient point.
the salient. What's the salient nature of this Torah portion?
Joseph's struggles and his eventual ascension.
Yeah. Joseph becomes a man, right? Okay, the first aliyah is Genesis 37, 1 through 11. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheep arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheep." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us?" Or are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. So we start out and it says these are the generations of Jacob, and then it says Joseph was 17 years old and goes into Joseph. Why does it transition to Joseph?
Because we have to get the suffering servant image out there.
The suffering servant image. Okay, we have to, he's identifying who the seed is being passed to, right?
Yep.
The one that's gonna propagate the word. So what do the sages say about Jacob desire to settle the land? You know, when Jacob came back, he bought a piece of land for 100 pieces of silver. You know, he did a lot of things, but what was he doing?
Establishing that was his land.
Okay, he was transitioning from being a stranger and a sojourner to being the possessor of the land. He looked upon himself as fulfilling the promise of populating the land. But was that God's plan? Not exactly. It was God's plan, but not with him. It was through Joseph the promise would be fulfilled, right? Go ahead.
Joseph had a big role.
Yeah, Joseph had a big role. What was Joseph's job in the family? What did it say his job was? He was in charge of the sons of the concubines, the secondary wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. What does his brothers think about that? What does it say?
Who's this young whippersnapper wants to tell me what to do?
Yeah. What did he do? What does the scripture say that Joseph did? Wrote a bad report. Some of us were talking about this. In the word where it says bad report is actually evil report or an evil speech. And
So was it Lashon Hara?
it wasn't Lashon Hara. It was a.
But it was still a
form.
raw.
It was still raw.
Mm-hmm.
But the context was that Joseph wanted to bring the report. He wanted to bring a bad report. He said, if you go take that scripture and paste it into a translator, it says Joseph wanted to bring this report, this evil report, to his father. In other words, he possessed it. He wanted to do it. In other words,
He's excited
Just a
he
desire.
had something on his brothers.
right.
Yeah.
Whether, the scripture says whether good or bad, you should hold your tongue for evil speech unless it's going to affect something if you're trying to protect someone. And so it was kind of like in the context they did some things that maybe it wasn't all that great, but he didn't need to tell his father about it. That's the context. And so they hated him even more. And that's the context of it.
But what he said was probably true.
Yeah, it was probably true, but it
And-
was still an evil speech. That's why
No,
I
I understand. I'm just, because he's also telling them, and you're going to ask questions about the dream in a minute?
But to be what?
The dream? You're going to ask about the dream?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay, so why did Jacob loved Joseph more than the other sons?
Kelly.
Hmm?
Kelly.
Rivka.
Yeah, it's more.
Raquel,
Raquel.
the son of his favorite wife,
Yep.
The firstborn. His favorite one.
the firstborn of his favorite wife. So, what was the coup de grace? Was that in here? I think that's in the next one. It's in the next one. I'm gonna wait that up. So when he had the dreams and the sheaves bowed down, and then the sun, moon, and stars bowed down, what was? We all know what that's alluding to, but how did they see it?
It only matters how daddy took it.
It only matters how daddy took it.
They saw it as absurd that the youngest was going to rule over them,
Yeah.
to include mom and dad.
Right.
Right.
Now can I?
But he filed it in the back. He mulled that one over.
Yeah.
So, something I was seeing here is like Hebrews 4:12, the word is sharp on a two-edged sword, right? Judging hearts and minds of men. Him telling this is true. He's not telling a story, he's not making things up, it's completely true. But what they did with that true information gets them into the spot that it got them. You see the act of word judging exactly what they did.
So, what characteristics did Joseph and Jacob share? Y'all remember what they are? Oops, I hit the
Well, they
wrong
both saw.
hit the wrong button.
They
what?
both saw dreams. Jacob saw the angels going up and down the ladder, and he wrestled with the Lord.
Okay, I'm going to have to add one to my deal here. They both had a mother that was initially barren and then had two sons.
Okay. Yeah.
And both were considered firstborn of their mothers. Jacob was regarded as such by Rebekah from the beginning. So they weren't the firstborn, but they were considered firstborn. The mothers both had trouble with their pregnancies. They both had brothers who hated them and wanted to kill them. They both lived in exile from their homeland. In other words, they weren't. Joseph was taken out, and so was Jacob. So they had a lot in common, right? What's the last one? They both loved Rachel, the chosen bride. So
They both, although not part of the land they were in, prospered the land because they were favored by God.
right. Well, the thing about it is I think, looking back, a lot of things we don't see until we look back and see them. And I think that Jacob and Joseph saw these things. Once they reflected on their lives, that they would have said, look at what we have in common. Look at what happened to us. Look how God prospered us even through our struggles. And that's one of the things that, even in our lives, things happen to us and we wonder why they happened. And then we look back and we say, man, I'm glad that happened because it changed my life. And so what was it that Joseph will tell his brothers when they're reunited?
For what you cause for evil, God caused for good.
That's right. And they were all better for it, right?
They were alive.
They were alive.
And got opportunities to repent.
So, in the end, it says that Jacob kept the matter in mind. What does it mean? He kept the matter in mind.
Well, Mary pondered it in her heart, so it's probably the same concept of thinking about it.
Pondered.
honoring.
It's like I
God.
probably need to look for the signs of this happening later.
Right.
File it away for use later.
Yep. File it in the grade drive.
Well, I mean, in those days they called it night visions, right? When you dream something, a night vision, and they were prophetic. They looked at them as God as speaking to them. So, in a lot of respects, Jacob knew that those were prophetic. He knew that he was Abraham's, Isaac's offspring, and that God had promised them certain things. And so when it says he kept those in mind, he said, these things may be included in the prophecy of my fathers. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Genesis 37:12-22. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, here I am. So he said to him, go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, what are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock. And the man said, they have gone away, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see that what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. So they were pasturing their sheep near Shechem. And what is Shechem?
Where they got all those guys to get circumcised and then killed them. Dean and
They
got
set
raped.
them up and eliminated them, right? Did you?
She did want it. She's got
So what's unusual about Jacob's mission sending Joseph to check on his brothers? Unusual.
That he's using the youngest, or almost the youngest, as the firstborn,
Uh,
as
Well-
the supervisor.
Well, no. Jacob had a lot, didn't he? I mean, we've noticed before that when he was coming, he sent a whole bunch of animals to his brother for appeasement.
Right.
And then he bought a piece of land, and then they did all these things. So he was he had male and female servants. He could have sent anybody to go check on his brothers. He didn't have to send him, right? Okay. Why was he sending him?
He's sending him when he's training.
Maybe he was hoping for a little quality time so they would chill out together.
Okay. What about Jacob? He wasn't in a vacuum, was he? He realized there was conflict between the boys, right?
right.
And he says, go see how well it is with your brothers. He's saying, go make peace with your brothers. He didn't know he was sending him into the lion's den. He said, you know what's going on. You've got some mind about you. Go see about the welfare of your brothers. So what is the welfare of your brothers?
Mental state.
How they're behaving.
Your relationship with them, right?
Yeah.
Their welfare, you and your brother's welfare are tied together. right?
Not really.
Well, no, I mean, in a family situation, I mean, they're a what we would call a family business. They work together. They're a family. That's what, you know, in that day and time, they were clans. They were family clans. Just like when it goes over, when we were studying last week about Esau and the clans of Esau. And it talked about all the kings that came from it. And there was kings in Seir before a king ever ruled in Judah.
They were
In
significant in their land, but they were still the upstart.
Right. But Jacob, seeing them as brothers and knowing that they were carriers of the seed of Abraham, he said, you guys need to bury the hatchet. You need to
Not the
make,
Joseph.
you need to make amends with what you're doing, where you're going. So from where was Jacob, did Jacob send his beloved son? Where were they located?
Dothan.
Outside Shechem.
No, he sent.
Found
Where would he
him.
send him from?
Oh,
They were in Hebron.
Yes.
okay.
They were at Hebron. And what does Hebron mean in Hebrew? It means seat of association, or that could be translated as fellowship. He sent them, and Hebron's on the mountain, and it says from the valley, he's descended to the valley of Hebron. So, he was sending him to rekindle his fellowship with his brothers. You see what I mean? And so he sends him from Hebron, and he's out looking for his brothers. And what does it say? Who was the man that he found wandering around Shechem?
We don't know the man, but we assume it could be Yeshua.
You think it could be? So what did the man tell him?
We know that Dothan.
Okay. And what does Dothan mean? Y'all know what Dothan means? It says it's uncertain, but it's translated literally as two wells. Two wells. And what are wells? Water? Water. Why is water important? Why would it say he sent him from two wells?
Out in the middle of the desert?
Water is life.
Water is life. That's right. That's where, if you don't have water where they are, you don't have anything. You can't raise any animals, crops, nothing. So you have to have a well, right? So he's sending him from Shechem to Dothan. So what happened when the brothers saw him coming?
Let's get rid of the dreamer.
Okay. What's the difference in the ages of Joseph and his brothers? Do y'all know?
Not a whole great
Less than
lot.
17 years.
Let me show you what it is. Joseph was 17 when he was sold. He was 30 when he was the head of Egypt. He was 37 when the famine started. He was 39 when his brothers arrived. So it was 7 years of good. They put up the grain. 39 when they were 2 years into the famine when the brothers showed up. So Jacob was 130 years old when he arrived. So 39 years prior, he was 91 when Joseph was born. Jacob was 75 when he arrived in Haran. He was 82 when he married Leah and Rachel after working for the 7 years. So Joseph was born within 9 years after his 10 older brothers. Remember, Leah gave birth to the first 4, and all 4 women gave birth to the last 8. So within 5 years, he he was born, and all those others were born. So he was within 5 years of 6 of them, or 5 of them. So they were pretty close to the same age. Just the first 4 were the furthest away. But for 11 brothers, then within 9 years.
Irish twins.
Well, a lot of them were born at the same time, and within the same year. And it made me think. My father was born in 21. He had a brother born in 22, a sister born in 23, and another born in 25. So they had 4 kids within 5 years.
Praise the Lord.
Anyway, what I'm saying is that people used to just have kids on a regular basis.
They still do in Israel.
Yes, they sure do.
It's a lot cheaper than farm hands.
Once you get them raised up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened at the end right here, right before? They're throwing him in. They're going to get him and throw him in the pit.
They take his tunic, don't they?
Well, they haven't taken his tunic yet.
They haven't.
No, they're just talking about getting him up. What does Reuben do?
Defense, he's the oldest, and he does what oldest brothers do. As they may be hitting the next one down, and the hit for the next brother goes to the next brother, and the next brother, and the next brother, as the pecking order goes. And he's defending his brother. Because if something happens to the little brothers, it's all your fault. You're the oldest.
Right.
You should have gotten control.
Well, he's already on the outs with his
Yeah.
father, right?
Right.
And he's saying, I can't let this stand. Well, where will I go if this happens?
So, is he already on the outs with his father?
That's what I'm saying. He's already on.
I don't know that he's already on the outs with his father.
Well, it says that he went up and defiled us.
Was that already?
That's already.
Okay.
He was only about 17 when that happened.
So she was a cougar, huh? That's pretty gross.
Okay.
It was a big age difference.
Genesis 37:23-36. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and I, where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood, and they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. And his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted. And he said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Ossifer. That's Tony the Tiger or something like that says that. So why does it say the pit was empty and there was no water in it?
Means
because it was
death.
empty and there's no water
Dead
in
and
it.
no life.
He didn't drown.
He didn't drown.
Didn't drown, did he?
But a pit that's empty represents death, whereas water in a well or a pit means life.
Well, it can also allude to the fact that in an empty pit, there's snakes, scorpions, spiders, and other creatures
Yeah.
that
Right.
could have attacked him, right?
Yeah.
True.
So being in the pit was not all that pleasant.
No.
So what did the boys do after they threw him in the pit?
They sat down and covenanted to eating a meal together.
Yeah, they sat down and ate a meal. That's pretty brash, if you ask me. Let's throw our brother in this hole and let's go have a good meal together. Yeah,
It's callous, is what it
It's
is.
Callous.
probably just showing where's it all bowing down now? You see what we're having over here? This is some great barbecue. Sure wish you could come up here, but you gotta have them dream, don't you?
Okay, who came up with the idea to sell Joseph into slavery?
Judah.
Judah. Yeah, and it says it's got Ishmaelite traders, it's got
And Midianite.
Midianites, it's got all kinds of stuff going through here. What's going on with that?
Well, they just gotta document that the Ishmaelites are the longest slave traders, longest family slave traders on the planet. They're still involved.
Hmm. The Midianites,
No, Ishmaelites.
Ishmaelites. So what else does it reveal?
Lydians were making money even then. I mean, that's the Arabs.
Well, they were also carrying balm and myrrh and things like that. Myrrh was given for Yeshua at his birth, but the myrrh is used for death. So
Right.
this is another sign of death.
And it's also showed that the relatives of the forgotten children are not going to be forgotten.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ishmaelites and the Midianites are their relatives,
Yeah.
and they're complicit in his sending to Egypt as a slave.
Those who don't know the seed transported the seed where it needed to be.
Mm-hmm. Now, how much they get for him?
20 shekels.
About 7 ounces of
Shoes.
silver sickles. What they use? That silver shekels for?
Shoes.
For shoes.
Jude.
For shoes. Where does that come from?
I've heard it, but I don't remember.
How about Amos? For 3 transgressions of Israel, and 4 I will not revoke the punishment, because they sell the righteous for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes. Those who trample the head of the poor into the dust of the earth, and turn aside the way of the afflicted, a man and his father go in to the same girl, so that my holy name is profaned.
And what scripture was that? Amos?
Amos 2:6-8. They lay themselves down beside every altar on garments taken in pledge. In the house of their God they drink the wine of those who have been fined. Just puts in Amos, he's trying to explain that sin will be found out. And that's the same thing that's going on here.
So is he talking about Tamar and Judah?
To some extent, yes. He's alluding to their sin for selling their brother and what they used the money for, but it's also alluding to Judah and what he
And his 2 sons?
and his 2 sons and
Tamar.
Tamar.
It almost seems like that would have been in a Haftarah or something.
A what? A Haftarah? It was.
I know.
So, what did Jacob infer from the bloody tunic, from the coat that they returned?
That it was Joseph blood and not goat blood.
Was it goat?
Wild animal
Mom,
killer.
Wild animal killed him.
What do you, that phrase, do you recognize? This will come up again and again.
Do what?
Do you recognize? It's the same thing that was said to his, that Isaac said to Jacob. The sons said to Jacob.
and
Jacob says to about Manasseh and Ephraim, or
But
maybe
it,
just
but
a
Tamar says it to,
To-
Reuben.
Who are these?
To Judah.
Judah. Tamar says it to Judah.
Right.
Yeah, the same
Who
phrase.
are these?
You recognize these.
Do you
Mhm.
recognize these?
Mhm. Uh, so why do y'all think that Jacob refused to be comforted by his, they all came to comfort him because of the loss of Joseph, but he refused. It says he mourned for many days. And the midrash is that he mourned for 22 years. In other words, until he got back to and saw Joseph, he was in mourning. So why would he refuse to be comforted?
He thought something was up, and he wasn't gonna be comforted from,
He kept the sheaves and whatnot and the stars in mind.
yes.
Yeah, and he remembered the dream that he told
I
him.
know my boy was a prophet.
Yeah,
This ain't
He
happening
knew
yet.
something was up.
how were they down?
There's others I've heard about when they finally do meet, that he knew the whole time that his son was in Egypt and didn't go down there. I don't know where they get that, but that's that saying, he knew something was up. They knew something was up.
Well,
He knew that his brothers hated him. Maybe he did want him to go down to reconcile, but I don't know about that. That he was so hated that a 17-year-old make it up with his others? I don't know about that.
well, but on the other hand, you could think that he knew the conflict and that he might have felt guilty for sending his son down
That could be too.
to reconcile when he was too young to do the reconciliation. So he might have had some guilt complex. You reckon?
Plausible.
Possible.
Well, he's the one that created the whole environment anyway,
That's right.
by setting one child above the others and not loving them all.
Well, I don't think in the Hebrew concept, I think he loved them all. He doted on Joseph. He
Played
expressed
favorites.
his love more, but he loved all his sons.
Played favorite.
They just couldn't accept that he was that way.
Well, yes, that's like telling all of your children and giving all of your children kisses and giving all the kids Converse canvas and giving one child the leather Nikes.
The leather Nikes.
To bring this story up to date, Donald's is
Or a coat of many colors.
Or a coat of many colors.
there. Quote a minute ago. I love you all, but here's a Hershey Kisses for this one.
Well, it's a parent's natural reaction to mourn the loss of a child, and when it's your youngest and your most favorite, you do mourn. I mean, it's a natural human reaction.
Yeah.
But Benjamin was already there.
I don't think it's unusual.
Yeah, Benjamin was right there. Yeah, Benjamin had to be there.
Yep. Wasn't quite as young as yet.
Oh, he's what, 5?
Well, it's not always the youngest, because I was the youngest, but my mother liked my brother James more than she did.
Well, that's understandable.
And for good reason. We are all familiar with the purpose behind that one.
Y'all can all see the wisdom of my mother. Okay.
That's right.
I get it.
I don't want to say well done, but Did you know "does" is a Hebrew word?
Do what?
I have a devotional book that goes on into when Reuben returns to the pit and he sees that Joseph is gone. In the Hebrew, the boy is gone, where shall I go? There are so many consonants in there that in the Hebrew that it's a tongue twister. I tried my best to learn how to do that. For a while I could do it in Hebrew as a tongue twister. But he was so upset that what he was actually doing was stuttering. The boy is gone, where shall I go? Of course, that we don't see a stutter there. But in the Hebrew, you try saying that in Hebrew, and it is stuttering. He was extremely upset. But I don't think we see that type of despair in English as it is in Hebrew.
I see.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Not without an hour backstory.
Okay, Genesis 38, 1 through 30. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. He took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Er. She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she called his name Shelah. Judah was in Chavez when she bore him. And Judah took a wife for Er, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Er, Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of Yahweh, and Yahweh put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother. But Onan knew the offspring would not be his, so whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste his seed on the ground, so as not to give offspring to his brother. And what he did was wicked in the sight of Yahweh, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow for your father's house till Shelah my son grows up, for he had feared that he would die, like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, tongue twisters, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And when Tamar was told, Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear sheep, she took off her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, and she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, Come, let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, What will you give me that you may come into me? And he answered, I will send you a young goat from the flock. And she said, If you give me a pledge until you send it. He said, What pledge shall I give you? And she replied, Your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose, went away, taking off her veil. She put on the garments of her widowhood. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adulamite to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, Where is the cult prostitute who sat at Enaim at the roadside? And they said, No cult prostitute has been here. So he returned to Judah and said, I have not found her. Also the men of the place said, No cult prostitute has been here. And Judah replied, Let her keep the things as her own, or we shall be laughed at. You see, I sent this young goat, and you did not find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality. And Judah said, Bring her out and let her be burned. As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant. And she said, "Please identify whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." Then Judah identified them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not know her again. When the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as he drew back his hand, behold, the brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So, what happened to Judah about this time? About this time, what happened?
His wife died.
His wife died, he was comforted, and we have the story of Tamar. And what is this story all about?
The bloodline.
The bloodline. So, what about the two Canaanite women, the two boys that were sons of the Canaanite woman?
They were evil.
Not included.
They weren't,
They,
God didn't want them, but
no.
what about Tamar? He had taken a Canaanite woman, had two sons with her, and both of them got killed. They didn't carry the seed. But Tamar was different. She wasn't a Canaanite. We don't know her bloodline, do we?
Well, I go with this family story,
What's the family story?
is that either her father or grandfather was Shem. That's the family story.
That's the family story. Okay. Well, we'll go with that for now, but that's a stretch.
Well, that's why, looking at Chabad.org, that's why he said to bring her out and burn her, because that was supposed to be the punishment for the daughter of a priest who
Yeah.
went into prostitution.
Yes.
Now, see, that makes more sense.
Let's just add to the story.
That Shem's the
Just ask
now,
him.
he said that is the
Yeah.
priest.
You just proved my point.
Uh-huh.
Do you think the red scarlet was because the first one that was really bad was red, and they're like, we need to watch out for that firstborn guy to identify one to watch out for?
Okay.
There's only main twine they had.
The first one came out with his own scarlet thread.
Yeah. What were the names of Judah's boys? Er, Onan,
and,
Shelah. You know what those mean?
Onan, that's a generator.
Er is protector, Onan is vigorous, and Shelah is petition.
Protector what?
Protector, vigorous, and petition.
So the whole goal of Judah's building a family to be arrows to shoot into the future turned out to be duds. And God set him up with Perez,
Perez.
the bringer.
Right. Well, the deal is
Oh, I know.
Judah, who is prophesied to be the carrier of the seed, Judah, the scepter will not pass from Judah. He didn't make the right choice in a wife. So God engineered him to pick a wife for his son that carried the seed by subversion. I mean, he killed off the two sons. Then Judah rebelled and said, I'm not going to give a third son. And so then he directed Tamar to go to him and pass the seed with the correct woman. So it's an orchestrated event. That's my opinion.
And with all the dead wives and husbands, it's not quite as sinful as it appears as we read it.
Right.
Judah performed Edom himself.
Mm-hmm. He did. Ibum is bringing up offspring for your childless brother.
In Christianity, we call it kinsman redeemer.
Kinsman redeemer. Yeah.
I thought it was a Levirate. I thought it was called Levirate.
Levirate.
Yeah.
It is one of the Levirate laws, but it is a kinsman redeemer. Boaz was a kinsman redeemer. In other words, Ruth didn't have any sons left, so when he came back, Boaz was the kinsman redeemer who redeemed her land and became the husband of Ruth.
Except for the one that we don't know whose name that Boaz had to go see and ask.
Yeah.
Yes, he's the one that had his sandal taken off.
Right.
And he was acting with Ebum, was acting with an Ebum before Ebum had been given. So it was still through the oral tradition handed down from God to Adam and through the family.
Family story.
So, what was the pledge that he gave, that Judah gave
To
Tamar?
go.
His ring, his
His
cord,
ring,
his
his
staff.
coat, his staff.
In his whole identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Figure.
So what did those represent?
His authority.
Who he was.
It's his identity.
That's right. I mean, that's who it is. I mean, it's like us pulling out our driver's license, giving our name, address, and social security number.
Signet ring was a seal.
Right. So he gave his identity to her.
And he didn't know hers.
But
The cord was, the ring, it was attached, it hadn't been broken, so it wasn't stolen, it was given.
right. But that's what I'm saying. It was a stolen identity, but it was a given identity.
Yeah.
You know, most of these things, like the break-ins and stuff, you know, I don't know if y'all heard, but recently, the chain of hospitals that BSA is a part of, got
Hacked.
it wasn't hacked.
They got somebody clicked on some ransomware.
No, a guy called in to tech support, and the tech support guy said I hadn't been able to get my password changed, and so he changed the password for it and gave him the password. That's why they got in. And a lot of times that's the way break-ins happen, is someone gets the number for deal and they call someone that won't go through the normal chains of getting things done for identification, and things get messed up. And that's what happened to them.
Social engineering.
Yeah. So you got to be careful if someone calls in and says, well, if you give me that password, I'll fix that for you.
Well, the IT guy.
Yeah, right.
The IT guy is never, ever supposed to give passwords.
That's right.
Ever. He's not even supposed to be. He's not even supposed to be able to see them.
Right.
Well, that's all good in theory, but it happens all the time.
I wonder where that IT guy's working now.
Somalia.
He's a fry cook, man.
A whopper flopper.
So, the entire account of Judah and Tamar, what is that all about? Why is it we got Joseph and everything's going along here, and then all of a sudden it makes a left turn to Judah and the boys, and then it makes a right turn back to Joseph?
Whose idea was it to sell the brother?
It was Judah's.
Who performed the Ibum? And in the end, who goes to defend Benjamin? I think this is all in the breaking of Judah, so that he is humbled and knows what the loss of not only his firstborn but his secondborn, and what was their names? Strength and
It's
vigor,
vigorous and protection.
protection and vigor. With the
Protection
first
and
two.
vigor.
So those are the two that are gone.
And petition.
And so those are the two that are gone. So now he's told his father, when there's a famine, he's told his father, I will, by my life, I'll protect Benjamin. And so here he's in this position, and he comes up to Joseph, and whether Joseph knows that Judah was the one, that, I mean, whether he's an earshot or not, that it was Joseph or Judah's idea to sell him, it was Judah who stood up for Benjamin and says, no, take me. For I told my father that it's on me. Either Benjamin comes back or I don't come back.
Right. Okay, so what it is it's the middle part of the chiastic structure. It's what the whole story turns on.
Yeah.
Is that Judah has to be brought in to the position that he is supposed to have as the ruler. And it says his brothers listened to him. So that indicates, when it says his brothers listened to him, that he had already ascended to a position of authority.
He was a judge.
Right.
A.D. Chumney does a pretty good deal on Melchizedek priesthood, king, priest, firstborn.
Right.
And you can give up your firstborn right. And then whenever we see Reuben offers his son, or they offers his sons, right? Take my firstborn. We all think, wow, he's really giving his firstborn, when truthfully he failed again, and he's supposed to give himself his own life.
Right.
God, when he came down as Yeshua, gave his own life.
Yeah, I like Martin Biltz when he covered that. He says, when Reuben goes, he says, take my two sons and kill them.
Yeah.
And he says, what?
Take them, I'll make more.
Okay, moving right along. Genesis 39, 1 through 6. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. Yahweh was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that Yahweh was with him, and that Yahweh caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and tended him, and he made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, Yahweh blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of Yahweh was on all that he had in the house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Now it says that Potiphar was the captain of the guard, right?
Yes.
And how important is being captain of the guard in this story?
Very.
It's one of the turning points in the whole story. He gets bought by the captain of the guard, and he takes Joseph, and he's the head of his household. It says nothing gets done in the house except Joseph does it. The only thing that Potiphar does is worry about his food. And why does it mention his food?
It's lying.
Well,
Whether it's poisoned or not.
that's right. In that day and time, the way they assassinated people is they poisoned their food and got rid of them, and it was hard to prove who did it. And that's the same story that we're going to get into here in a second.
What the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker?
That's right. Yeah, the candlestick maker kind of avoided it because
Yeah,
he
he
didn't
wasn't-
have
he wasn't
to
in.
do with the food.
Yeah.
So he was just going to burn him to death, I guess. Okay, Genesis 39, 17, 23. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house, and he has put everything that he has in my charge. He is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house was there in the house, she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And as soon as she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled out of the house, she called to the men of her household and said to them, See, he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he had heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled and got out of the house. Then she laid up his garment by her until his master came home. And she told him the same story, saying, The Hebrew servant whom you have brought among us came into me to laugh at me. But as soon as I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment beside me and fled out of the house. As soon as his master heard the words that his wife spoke to him, This is the way your servant treated me, his anger was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. But Yahweh was with Joseph, and he showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge, because Yahweh was with him. And whatever he did, Yahweh made it succeed. So Joseph's in the house, and he's tested by Potiphar's wife, right? And why is he being tested by Potiphar's wife?
Well, in a way, she was the vehicle to get him into the prison of the king, which eventually would bring him to Pharaoh's presence.
Yeah,
Because
we know that's the outcome, but
Because she came to steal, kill, and destroy.
right?
That's
She
why
was
she tempted him, not test. Even though it's the same word. God gave him a test. She was a temptation.
right. She was a temptation to Joseph, but it was a test by God
Yes.
to prove that he was loyal to the commandments, right? Some of the sages say that it was providential that what happened to Joseph, since God was doing him a favor by getting him out of the evil household and the immoral people that he was around.
That's interesting.
So he sent him to prison where all the immoral
So
people
that-
are.
So the higher morals were kept in a cage.
Yeah.
But that day's coming.
Well, that day's coming, but actually, who was when you get sent to prison and it's the prison of the captain of the guard. That's not a regular prison where the common people are sent. You know, when you were in prison.
You're saying he went to Club Fed?
No. If you were a commoner and you were sent to prison, you know, your family had to feed you.
Right.
They had to take care of you. But the captain of the guard, that prison was for prisoners that were like elite individuals. It wasn't a commoner's prison. And one of the thoughts here is that Potiphar knew that his wife was lying.
Yeah.
And so he put him in the good prison so he would survive.
Well, he's the captain of the guard.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's the captain of the guard. I mean, so he's
Yeah.
he's the guy that runs the prison.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the only way he could get by with what he did.
That's right. That's the only way he could have got by with it.
I gotta get rid of this, but I can't hear her at the same time.
That's right. Yeah. And that's the question: is how did Joseph overcome the wife?
He fled.
He fled. He ran. He got away.
He sets up an example for Paul to tell us about later.
That's right.
Flee from that immorality.
That's right. I mean, and that's
All others are outside the body.
and it's like one of the lessons that we try to teach children. Is, you know, when you see bad things happening that people are instigating around you, get away from it. Flee from it. Don't stay around, or guilt by association sometimes will
I'm
get
just
you. I
thinking that guilt
I
by
know
association.
one time one of our children was on a date, and they went to a party, and they were just on the porch, and the police arrived. And inside the house, they had some alcohol, and it was alcohol possession by minors, and they had just walked on the porch and got arrested with everybody else. I mean, you just get close to some of that stuff, and bad things happen. Even though you didn't have any bad intentions and you didn't even know, law enforcement doesn't care. You were here, you were on the premises, you're guilty. And that's where Joseph was. He said, I cannot be here. I must leave. I must flee. On the other hand, you could say, well, there was no other man in the house and she was there. Why did you go in? That's the other side of the story.
But she called to the men of her house.
Do what?
She called to the men of her house.
I know, but she had to scream real loud and get their
Because
attention.
she'd already sent them out.
And then she blamed it on her husband. He
That's
has
right.
brought in.
That's right. She blamed it on her husband. I like it. This Hebrew that you brought in here. Yeah.
That's some remarkably like that woman that you gave me.
Yeah. Woman that you gave.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember that. I seems like that was a real early thing.
Genesis 2-ish?
Yeah, way back there. Maybe they were related.
Well, that's true, because he.
Well, we're all related to that one, so I'd say yeah.
Now, Joseph being in charge of the prison, isn't that the world turned upside down?
No,
It's not?
not in a Middle Eastern prison. And so if you listen to the Green Prince, what is it, Vayeshev?
Uh-huh.
His father was one of the founders of Hamas. He was raised up in Hamas, and he was the leader of Hamas youth. And then he gets busted and put into prison. And in prison, they just it's got walls. And his uncle was the head of the inside the Palestinian prison. His uncle was in prison, and yet his uncle was in charge of the prison. It wasn't like a prison where you have guards and stuff. No, they just put you in, and it was like, let the rats eat each other. And so they were killing each other. And this is part of why he turned and became a believer and worked for Mossad for 10 years.
Yeah.
And had his own father arrested. And you start seeing after, it's been years since I've seen anything from him, but once the war started, man, he's back in the limelight again, saying,
Yeah,
this is, my prayers that I live to see Hamas die before I die.
They had a very cost efficient system.
Yeah.
Yes.
You didn't get to eat unless your family brings it, and they didn't pay any guards. They just locked the door.
Yeah. Well, the point being is that he arrives and he becomes the man. Who was there before? What happened before? Joseph was there. Well, evidently, the prison warden had to do everything, right? And he says, once Joseph arrived, that guy was on Easy Street. So that's why I'm saying it was the world turned upside down. God, his hand changes everything.
For sure.
Not everything.
Yes, everything.
No, doesn't change the law.
Okay, I didn't mean the law. I'm not talking about
You made
changing
that.
the law.
That's right. He changes us.
Okay, we gotta get to number 7. Genesis 41 through 23. Sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his 2 officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them, and they continued for some time in custody. And one night they both dreamed, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt. who were confined in the prison, each his own dream, each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in custody in his master's house, "Why are your faces downcast today?" And they said to him, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." And Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Then Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly, when you were his cupbearer. Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I also had a dream. There were 3 cake baskets on my head, and in the uppermost basket there were all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head." And Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants, and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him."
That sure was sad for that baker, to know in 3 days you're gonna be hungry.
So, going back to our prison story, what did the chief cupbearer and the baker do? Why were they arrested? Why did Pharaoh have something against them?
Somebody probably tried to.
Somebody tried to poison.
Someone tried to poison the Pharaoh, and so it either came through the food
Wine
or
or
drink.
bread.
And so he threw them both in jail so he could figure out which one it was. And so when he figured out who it was, then he restored one and killed the other.
I wonder if there's any. I wonder what the significance is. I wonder what the significance is there. It came through either the wine or the bread.
Right.
Yeah.
Flesh is weak.
Saved by the blood.
Hmm?
You're saved by the blood.
There you
By the
go.
blood. How many years did Joseph remain in prison after interpreting the dreams? 2 years? 2 years? How many times did he ask the cupbearer for help?
I think 2.
2 times, right? He said, "Would you remember me? I've been in here, and besides that, I didn't do anything." He asked him twice, "Please tell Pharaoh." He said, "Would you remember me, and would you tell Pharaoh?" So he asked twice, right?
And
He didn't
remembers,
rely on the Lord.
Huh?
remembers take action, not just, oh yeah, there's a guy down there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he may not have been relying on the Lord, he was relying on man to get him out of there.
That's right. That's why he was in there for 2 more years. 2 more years.
Because he didn't remember the sheep and the stuff.
Okay. In the genealogy of Messiah, there were 4 women mentioned directly by name. Who besides Mary? Now, who are they?
Tomorrow.
Tamar, Rahab,
Ruth
Ruth,
and Bathsheba. Tamar, who seduced the father of her late husband, Rahab a prostitute, Ruth a Moabitess, and Bathsheba an adulteress. Ruth was the only
She probably
one.
had some help in that.
She what? She probably had some help in it.
Bathsheba probably had a lot of help in that.
Yeah, I don't know. Bathsheba is a tough one.
Yeah, why is it her fault?
Yes.
Why it's gotta be the girl? That's
It
almost
just is.
that's almost just like that woman you gave me.
That woman you gave her.
She was bathing us.
Yeah.
On top of a
That's
roof.
what they all did. Do you remember? I don't think so.
But that was the
He
normal
was
place
just
where they
retired.
And nobody below your class would have known.
And what?
Because you go, the social structure is that higher up the hill is the higher up the class.
Oh.
And so nobody below her station would have known.
Right.
It was only the king
The king
from
did.
his station could see all.
And he should have been with the
Out at
king.
war.
Yeah.
I've seen stuff that says that Rahab was not a prostitute, she was just an innkeeper.
Yeah.
I don't know. That doesn't say.
That's a Holisa take.
Is that it?
And that word doesn't necessarily mean she's an innkeeper.
Eh,
Who made up that list?
That's not made up. It's
No,
just
but
taken.
who gave the adjectives?
Really?
That's what I'm asking.
The English ones or the Hebrew ones?
Okay. Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave you, or turn my back from following you after you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God." When Ruth was leaving Moab and going back to Israel, going back to Bethlehem, back to Naomi's home, why was that important? When she said that, then Naomi said, "Okay, you can come." What changed?
Because I don't necessarily know that Ruth was going back. She was going with Naomi, who was going back.
Right.
And she was a Moabitess, and Moabitesses were to not be part of the congregation. 10 generations.
She was
and not.
She was the next generation after the 10.
Yeah.
And
10 plus
and
1.
she was going back. Or she was going to join herself to the house of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Right.
Because of her love for Naomi.
But Naomi recognized the fact that she said, "Your people will be my people."
And
when
your
she's-
God, my
Your God, my God. So once that statement was made, she said, "There's no reason why you can't go back, why you cannot participate with my people."
Because they became sisters of the same seed.
Right. So
Was she the 10th generation though? Or the 11th?
yes,
11.
11th
She
generation.
was
Eleven.
after Moses?
Hmm?
After a lot.
After Lot. She
God,
was-
God shows up right on time, huh?
Okay, after Lot.
Mhm. When Ruth when Paris was born from Tamar to Judah, because of the offspring of the Lord will give from this young woman. What was that about? Do y'all understand the question?
No.
May your house be like the house of Peretz, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring of the Lord will give you from this young woman. So,
The seed's coming through there and the throne will never depart.
in Ruth 4:12, where that comes from, it's saying that the seed comes through faith, not from who your lineage was. It's who has the Word of God in them, what they believe, what they live, how they walk, not who their parents were. So Ruth was that seed that came back from Moab. In other words, it says Lot was a righteous man. Was he a righteous man?
It says he
It
was.
says he
he
was.
was.
So what about David? So Nathan spoke to Bathsheba. Go immediately to the king and say to him, did you not, my lord, O king, swear to your maidservant, saying, surely your son Solomon shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king? Then while you are still talking there with the king, I also will come in after you and confirm your words. And then in Hebrews it says, by faith the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. And in James, likewise was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out another way? And then that's the verse I was just talking about. May your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young woman. So could you say that God orchestrated Bathsheba just like he did Tamar? What do you think? We talked.
He knew what David's eyeball was going to see.
Well, the point being is that in one of the Psalms, the Hallel, it says God is in heaven and he does whatever he pleases. Y'all remember that verse?
Yes.
We read it Thursday night. Our God is in heaven, he does whatever he pleases. So he orchestrates things. He makes relationships and things in our lives happen. And I think it's important that we look at these things and say, if we make the right decisions, if we walk in his ways, then we will be like these people. We'll be like the Rahab, the Tamars, the Josephs in God's kingdom. But we have to be willing to stand up and say, God's word is truth, and we will walk in his ways. And if we abandon that, then we won't walk in his ways. We won't profit in our lives. I mean, you can have material success in this life without being a God-fearer. But you won't have the next life. You'll be least in the kingdom, because that's what Yeshua said in Matthew 5:17. Don't think that I came to do away with the law and the prophets, but I came to fulfill. Anyone that makes life the least of these commandments will be least in the kingdom, but those who teach these commandments will be great in the kingdom. So where does that leave us? Why are we here talking about these people in the Old Testament walking in God's ways, fulfilling his prophecies, being part of the solution, not part of the problem?
You just said it.
Being part of the solution, not part of the problem?
No, right before that, where he's quoting about that he didn't come to do away with the law, but he came to teach us how to walk the law, or how to walk the mitzvot.
Because we're trying to learn how to abide in his love, just as he abides in his Father's love.
Yeah.
He never said abide in his grace, he said abide in his love.
But that's why I have trouble with maybe unless I misunderstood you, Paul, but God orchestrating things, I'm having trouble with David being orchestrated to see Bathsheba, putting him in that situation where he could maybe be a test, I guess, like for Joseph, but I think Bathsheba got taken advantage of. I'm having trouble with him orchestrating her to take a bath, and then she has to go off to the king.
Because
You
God
know,
has to
can't
fix
stand
it.
up to the
He
king.
wouldn't
He's
even
the
know
king.
the meal.
Well, I don't know the answer to the question. All I do know is that David didn't go to war.
Yeah, he shouldn't.
Yeah,
he
she
shouldn't
said,
have
why
been.
would he give you a law to break that you're not supposed to break, and that be part of the deal? That's what she's saying. Like, one of it is thou shalt not commit adultery.
Yeah.
So she's saying, why would God use that? That's what she's saying. Am I right?
Well,
Yeah, I see she's being set up, and I
We
can't
see what you're
God
saying, we're just not
put it.
sure we're buying it. So, is that right?
I think this is fine.
Okay, what do y'all think?
I don't know.
Go ahead,
I
Brenda.
think
I didn't hear what you said.
I think that
I didn't hear
understanding,
either.
I think that understanding all that, because one of the greatest difficulties I have is with people that don't believe in free will. Whenever you go down to a people do not have free will discussion, I don't think you ever end up to where you will not take and read when it says God creates evil, right? That you don't understand that that's the Hebrew ra, which is more chaos. God creates a tornado. A tornado is not inherently evil. It's part of things that happen. It doesn't mean that God thinks of something evil and causes somebody to do it.
well,
I think it would be more that God on the foreknowledge side, that God knew that David was going to have a problem,
But he didn't.
Or he used
and didn't
David's
stop it,
repentance.
and then use David's
David's
mistake for good.
right. It's the same thing with like you.
Because that first kid died, remember? And then the next kid saw.
I think God has to come in and fix some of our biggest mistakes.
Yeah,
And he
Right.
takes what you did because you had free will and
this is
you
it for good.
broke the law. You did not keep Torah. And God still loves you, and that's where I think mercy comes in.
And then
And David is the seed bearer.
Mhm.
He's not gonna toss him out, but he is gonna suffer consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he is going to be, he's not gonna lose his gifts, he's
And
not
we
gonna
would-
lose his standing, but it's gonna change his life.
we
It
would
changed
not
every son that he had from him.
But he was horrible.
Yeah.
All of them were bad.
we would not have Psalm 51 of David crying that, man, did I really mess up
Mess
here,
up.
and completely contrite heart
He was a
right
But
there.
he didn't change the consequences.
Right.
Right, so I think that, the way that you went with, it wasn't a trigger, but the arguments, when you have the one side, Calvinism and the ultimate sovereignty, I've argued with guys that, okay, we're not going to get off their butt and do anything until they're 400 pounds, and they are gonna proclaim that they got their ticket to go to heaven, and they're gonna sit on the gun and God wanted me to do it, and I don't do it. God is so sovereign that he'll make my iPhone do it. And then the other side about the free will, and those two arguing so much, and it's just like, I really love, I couldn't believe when I learned that the word in Hebrew, tempt and test, are the same word.
Yeah.
If you take the vowel points off of them, it's like, you don't know. You don't know. God, from the throne, I still remember throne doctrine, God's bringing it down this way. And I have the choice to look at the test and say, Father, I'm with you. And so I see this as a test, and I'm going to run like Joseph ran. Or I'm going to let the evil inclination tempt me, and I'm going to run into where I shouldn't be. And we all make those different. I can't say that I always pass the test, and I surely don't want to always fall to the temptation. But I can't say that I can't deny that I've done both.
But you don't break Torah without consequences.
Right.
It's just given.
The consequences are there, and I think that with the Torah part, that we don't it dawned on me for the first time, I think last time around in the Torah, last year, that the concept of, I was discussing with a brother, destroying the works of the devil. That I hadn't got it where it says that God beforehand created these good works for me to walk in them. And I hadn't put that New Testament part with the mitzvot of the Old Testament, that it's actually the ancient path of Torah. And that by doing the things that I'm supposed to do and not doing things that I'm not supposed to do, that is actually destroying the works of the devil. Because it's the works of the devil, the destruction, the brokenness in my family, where my ancestors did those things we weren't supposed to do and didn't do the things that we should do, that made way for that brokenness or the works of the devil in my family. And that as I walk Torah with you all, that I reverse those consequences in my family.
Those consequences?
Yes.
Well, the bottom line is that what we're talking about here is fulfilling our purpose. In other words, if you take a glass jar and you break it, it's wicked because it can't fulfill its purpose. Okay, if we're broken, we can't fulfill our purpose. We have to be healed. Okay, sin is what breaks us. Forgiveness, grace is what heals us. Okay, so in all these situations, God used a broken situation and healed it and brought forth His purposes for us in all these situations. And that's where we are. In other words, that we are looking to find God's path in our lives. You know, where it says in I can't remember the name of the book. It's one of the minor prophets where God says, I'm going to restore a pure language so that all will. Well, the pure language Hebrew, you see the things in the Hebrew like test and tempt. Okay? Where people that speak Hebrew, they see it every day. They understand the connection there. And it's like
They see the names and they're like, that guy's not gonna have a good day.
well, that's right. The example is Samson and Delilah. Samson is Shimshon, bright light, sunshine, and Delilah is night. You say good night, Lila told. That's good night. She is darkness, he is light. What does light have to do with darkness? They don't mix.
A haircut.
Yeah. Okay. We can see the humor in this situation. Okay, moving along.
What cracks me up is that's like a popular name right now. These people name their
And
kids
perfume
Delilah.
too.
Can you imagine
A real expensive perfume.
naming your
Did-
child that?
Oh, I know a kid named Damien.
Oh, yeah, I know.
That's very popular.
Oh my goodness.
Bet nobody knows what that
He's
is.
wicked.
His head's
His
been.
parents are
Each
worse.
school you'll see that.
He has really big dogs in his headband.
Okay,
Can you do something else before we get
you'll go
too
ahead.
far?
What is,
Something I've always loved in this Torah portion is right in verse 8 of 40 is, do not interpretations belong to God.
do not interpretation belong to God.
I
That's
think
right.
that is the largest overlooked thing in Acts 10, Peter's vision. That vision belongs to God. You don't get to interpret it. Wait until God tells you through
Amen.
Peter and
I
the Lord
agree.
and the Lord showed me, do not call men
Amen.
unclean
Right.
or common.
That's right. And that stems from not knowing the Torah.
That
Because-
stems for having an overbearing desire for a ham sandwich. That
Long
so much
story
so that you cannot see that literally in Acts 11 explains it. That is literally the work of the Holy Spirit.
Okay. Okay, y'all see what Calvin's saying?
Yes.
We live in interesting times. You know what?
Know what?
We don't trust the government. We don't trust the legal system.
Mhm.
We don't trust the media,
Uh-huh.
and we don't trust each other.
True.
We've undermined all authority, and with it, the basis for replacing it.
Very good.
Isn't that about right? We lived in a broken, messed up place.
Yeah.
Three of those things are all the same. The government, the legal system, media.
Hey, I've got good news though. I got chosen for the grand jury.
Did
we-
you?
And they made me the foreman.
I
Yeah.
give y'all my socks.
So I just started with prayer, and then they can sing Texas, our Texas. Then I'm gonna talk to them about their outfits.
So I'm
because
gonna-
they were all
Are you
dressed
gonna-
like bums.
You're not going to go in.
You really, you can't wear that.
You don't go in with a T-shirt that says "Kill 'em all, let God sort 'em out."
That's a
Do you have one?
There you go.
Well, they chose me, so it's gone. It was
Fry
all
'em.
gone.
So what's the grand jury, what you gonna be judging?
Everything in town. It's all the bad stuff.
All the
County.
For how long?
For 3 months.
Because grand juries decide whether or not to charge people,
Yeah,
right?
and I have to sign all the affidavits. The bills, they're called bills.
So, can you find out the other people's names on there so we can pray for them?
I will.
No, you can't.
Oh, you can't? No, I can say bill, can't I? I don't have to tell you anything else. do I? Whatever, just pray for it. I just think it's God is what I think.
Amen.
Okay, well, let's finish up Calvin, because that's not all the story.
Oh, okay.
What's that look supposed to be? We're studying geography. Now, what state do you live in? Denial. I can't argue with that. That's where we are, in denial. Okay, next week we're doing Miketz at the end. What's that all about? Okay, let's say the blessing. Join us. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gave to us the Torah of truth, Yeshua our Messiah, and life everlasting, set in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah. And in Hebrew, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, Yeshua Meshikeinu, v'kayi olam, ne'etam v'tekeinu, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ha-Torah. Great peace have those who love your law. Nothing can make them stumble.
The wicked is like the
I don't know what makes you stumble.
They do not know.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. Amen. לאלפי דורות, משפחתך וילדיך, דורותיך אחריך, רוחו תלך לפניך, לצידך אחריך, מסביבך בליבך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך, בבוקר ובערב, בצאתך ובואך, בסבלותיך, באושריך, הוא איתך, הוא איתך, הוא איתנו, עם כולנו, הוא איתך.